My parents had called off my wedding to pay for my sister's third divorce, so I'd run away without telling them. The call came as I was picking up my dress for final adjustments. My mom had that familiar tone that meant Tessa had screwed up again, and somehow it had become my problem. Honey, we need to discuss the wedding budget. I was standing in the bridal shop holding the dress of my dreams, watching the seamstress pin the hem. 3 weeks until the wedding. 200 guests confirmed, the venue paid for, the flowers ordered. So what? I asked, even though I already knew. Tessa's lawyer needs another $60,000. Her ex-husband is fighting for a vacation home, and if she loses it, she won't have anywhere to live with the kids. Tessa, 28. Third marriage falling apart spectacularly. Each divorce cost more than the last. Each time, Mom and Dad acted as if funding her disasters were their sacred duty. So you're postponing my wedding? Just temporarily. Maybe next spring. Do you understand? Tessa is in crisis mode. I understood perfectly. Tessa's chaos had always taken precedence. When I graduated with honors, they skipped my ceremony for her second divorce. When I was promoted to senior analyst, they couldn't celebrate because Tessa was arranging for her second husband to be arrested for domestic violence, which turned out to be a lie. The deposits are non-refundable. Mom, we're going to lose everything. We'll figure something out later. Family first, I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. My fiancé, Camden, appeared behind me, reading my expression. They canceled, huh? I nodded, holding back tears. What if we don't need their permission? He said quietly. The next morning, we went to the registry office. Camden was in his navy suit. I was in a simple cream dress from my closet, the one I'd bought for our engagement. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes and cost $42. We honeymooned over the weekend at his parents' country house. His family threw us an impromptu reception with a supermarket cake and fairy lights. It was more beautiful than anything my parents could have planned. For 3 months, we said nothing. My mother called weekly with updates on Tessa, the custody battle, her new boyfriend Vincent, her plans to move back into their basement. I listened and made supportive noises. Then came the call I'd been dreading. Great news, my mother chirped. Tessa's divorce is final. She's got the house and custody of the kids. We can start planning your wedding again. I think June would be perfect. That's great news about Tessa, I said calmly. By the way, Camden and I got married 14 weeks ago. Dead silence. What? A registry office ceremony. Very sweet. His parents were witnesses. You got married without a family? Her voice grew shrill. You called off my wedding to pay Tessa's legal bills. I found an alternative solution. How could you do this to us? We are your parents and I am your daughter, but apparently funding Tessa's misery is more important than my happiness. Then I heard Dad grab the phone. What he said next made me realize I'd vastly underestimated how far they were willing to go to maintain control. Okay. Dad's voice was icy. If you're going to make adult decisions without consulting your family, then you're going to handle your student loans on your own. I hope your new husband can pay the $400,000 you still owe. My stomach dropped. They'd been paying off my graduate school loans for 2 years, which they'd offered when I started my MBA. I'd never asked for their help, but they insisted. Focus on school, Mom had said. We can handle the financial stress. Now I understood why. You're cutting me off financially because I got married? You cut us off emotionally first, Mom interjected. Actions have consequences. You called off my wedding. We postponed it, Dad corrected, because of a family emergency. Instead of being mature and patient, you threw a tantrum. A tantrum. $400,000 in student debt is my price for throwing a tantrum. Camden appeared at my side, seeing my face go pale. I put the phone on speaker. It's about control, I said into the phone. You've manipulated me financially my entire adult life. We supported you. Mom's voice cracked with false resentment. Paid for your car, your down payment, your college education. And this is how you pay us? By getting married? By cutting us out of the most important day of your life. Camden stepped closer to the phone. With respect, Mrs. Morrison, you cut yourself out when you chose to fund another family member's legal problems rather than fulfill your obligations to your daughter's wedding. The silence stretched for a full minute. Then Dad's voice came back, colder than before. Who does this guy think he can talk to us about family obligations? That's your son-in-law, Camden replied evenly. And I'm the one who watched your daughter cry for 3 nights after you called off her wedding. Well, son-in-law, Dad spat the words out like venom. I hope you're willing to support her fully, because as of today, she's not getting anything from us anymore. Not for loans, not for emergencies, not for anything. You wanted to marry her so badly. Now it's your problem, the line went dead. I stood there, holding the phone in my hand, feeling as if someone had just pulled the financial rug out from under my entire future. Camden put his arm around me. We'll figure it out, he whispered. But I was already counting. 400 grand in student loans at 6.8% interest. My current salary barely covered the minimum payments. We were planning on buying a house next year, having kids in the future. All that just evaporated. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. I opened it with shaking hands while Camden read over my shoulder. It was from my parents' lawyer, a detailed document explaining that all financial support was being cut off effective immediately. I was also cut out as a beneficiary of their life insurance policies, their will, and my grandfather's trust fund, which I was supposed to inherit when I turned 30. The trust fund. I'd forgotten about it. Grandpa Morrison had left money for his grandchildren's futures. 200 grand each when they turned 30. Tessa had already eaten her way through her first divorce. I was 26, 4 years away from financial independence. It was over now, but the letter wasn't over. There was a second page that made my blood run cold, given recent events and the poor judgment our daughter had demonstrated. We have also contacted her employer to express concerns about her emotional stability and decision-making ability. As parents, we feel it is our duty to inform her coworkers of her current mental state. They called my boss. I grabbed the phone and dialed my manager, Rhonda, trying to keep my voice level. Hi, it's me. Did my parents call you? Rhonda's sigh said it all. Yes, yesterday morning. They're worried about you. What exactly did they say? That you've been acting erratically, making impulsive decisions. They mentioned that you got married suddenly, and they were worried that your judgment might affect your work. My career? They were trying to ruin my career. Rhonda, I got married 3 months ago. I didn't tell anyone because it's personal, but there's nothing erratically wrong with it. My parents are upset because they called off my original wedding and I found an alternative. Another pause. Look, I've been working with you for 4 years. You're one of our most trusted analysts, but your parents seem genuinely concerned. They suggested that you might benefit from taking some time off to sort out personal issues. A vacation, an unpaid vacation, that would make paying those student loans even more impossible. I'm not taking a vacation. I'm fine. This is revenge because I got married without their permission. Okay, but if you need support or counseling, HR offers programs. I hung up and sat on the couch, staring at the email. Camden found me there an hour later. They called my job, I said through numb lips. They're trying to fire me. He read the email, his jaw clenching with each line. This is harassment, he said finally. This is my family. No, family isn't ruining your life because you made choices they didn't like. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the pattern, how they controlled every major decision I made in my adult life with money. College choices. They paid for tuition, but only for business programs, not the art degree I wanted. Apartment locations. They helped with down payments, but only in areas they approved. Career paths. They funded my MBA, but expected me to work for companies they respected. I thought their support came from a place of love. Now I saw that it was for control. And the moment I stepped out of their control, they burned it all down. Over breakfast, Camden made the suggestion that changed everything. What if we sue them? I nearly choked on my coffee. Sue your own parents? Think about it. They promised to pay for your wedding, and then they backed out. You lost your deposits because of their broken promise. Now they're getting revenge by sabotaging your job and your financial stability. This has to be illegal somehow. Camden, These are my parents. These are people who are actively trying to ruin your life. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the words because he was right. That afternoon, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a lawyer. Janet Fitzgerald specialized in family law and elder abuse, but she listened to my story with growing interest. This could definitely be a case, she said, after reviewing the documents. Your parents made oral and written commitments to cover the costs of your wedding. When they broke those commitments, you suffered financial loss. Their retaliation through interference with your employment could be considered stalking or intentional infliction of emotional distress. I don't want to destroy them. I just want them to stop. Sometimes legal action is the only language these people understand. She named her fees. Expensive, but not impossible. Camden and I discussed it that night. This will only make things worse, I said. They'll never forgive me. What exactly do you expect to be forgiven for? For getting married? For not letting them control my life? For refusing to be their backup plan after Tessa? The next morning, I called Janet back. Sue. My parents' response was swift and forceful. My mother called within hours of the subpoenas. How dare you? She screamed into the phone. You're suing your own parents. Are you out of your mind? I'm protecting myself from revenge. Revenge? We're trying to teach you consequences. By sabotaging my career? By showing me what life without family support looks like. That's not support, Mom. That's punishment. That evening, Tessa showed up at my apartment. I hadn't seen her in months, and she looked terrible. Thin, pale, dark circles under her eyes. Can I come in? I stepped back, noticing the way she avoided eye contact. Mom told me about the lawsuit, she said, settling herself onto our couch. Of course she did. She's devastated. Dad's furious. They can't believe you're doing this. I sat across from her, studying my sister's face. Tess, did you know they called my boss? She shifted uncomfortably. They're worried about you. They tried to get me fired. Maybe you're exaggerating. They called off my wedding to pay your legal bills, then cut me off financially when I got married anyway. How can I exaggerate that? Tessa winced. I didn't ask them to pay for my divorce. You accepted their money. Of course I did. I had nowhere else to turn, and therein lay the difference between us. When Tessa hit rock bottom, she ran home to Mommy and Daddy. When I needed help, I made my own. They sent you here to talk me out of suing? She nodded reluctantly. What did they promise you if you talked me into it? Nothing. It wasn't about the money, but her voice cracked, and I knew she was lying. Tess, what did they promise you? She stared at her hands. Help with Vincent's legal problems. My jaw dropped. Vincent, your on and off boyfriend? What legal problems? DUI, hit and run. His license was taken away and he could go to jail. Oh my God, and that's financed too. He's a good guy who made a mistake. He left the scene of the accident. What if someone was hurt? Nobody was seriously hurt. Seriously hurt? Someone was hurt. Tessa's face twisted. The old lady broke her hip, but Vincent panicked. He wasn't used to drinking. Get out. What? Get out of my apartment right now. You don't understand. I get it. You're defending a drunk driver who sent an old lady to the hospital, and our parents are paying his legal bills while punishing me for getting married. Those are not the same thing. You're right. Vincent committed real crimes. I committed a crime by not asking permission to live my life. After Tessa left, I called Janet. We need to expand the case. I told her what had happened. I explained Vincent, the accident, his parents funding his defense while they cut me off. This shows a clear pattern, Janet said. They are selectively supporting family members based on their compliance with their wishes, not actual need or merit. That strengthens our case. How? It shows that the withholding of financial support wasn't about money. It was about punishment and control. That's the key to proving stalking. The lawsuit moved slowly, but other things moved quickly. My mother began calling my friends, coworkers, even Camden's family, spreading her version of events. According to her story, I was mentally unstable, had always been jealous of Tessa, and was now attacking my loving parents with a frivolous lawsuit. Some believed her. A classmate stopped returning my calls. A few coworkers began to treat me differently, but others saw the truth, especially after Vincent's hit-and-run accident made local news. When reporters mentioned that he was being defended by a high-profile lawyer funded by family members, the story began to make sense to people who knew our family dynamics. Camden's parents were furious on my behalf. His mother, Patricia, had raised 4 children without ever using money as a weapon. "This is financial abuse," she told me one night over dinner. "I've seen it before. Parents who can't let go, who use resources to maintain control even after their kids are adults." "But they helped me," I said. "Student loans, an apartment with strings attached. Real help doesn't come with strings attached and threats of punishment." She was right. I started thinking about all the times their help came with strings attached. The apartment they helped me buy had to be in a certain neighborhood. The car they sponsored had to be a practical sedan, not the convertible I wanted, even my MBA. They were only paying for business school, not the master's in nonprofit management I'd originally considered. Every dollar was a leash. 6 weeks into the trial, something unexpected happened. Vincent's case went to trial, and the details that emerged were worse than anyone expected. He hadn't just fled the scene. He'd texted while driving, hit an elderly woman in a crosswalk, then driven home, sobered up, and 6 hours later called the police to report his car stolen. The woman, Eleanor Kessler, had suffered not only a broken hip, but a traumatic brain injury. She was 73 years old and would likely never live independently again. Vincent was sentenced to 4 years in prison. And somehow, it was my fault too. Mom called the night after the sentencing, sobbing. "Are you happy now?" she demanded. "Vincent is going to jail because you refused to drop this lawsuit." "What does Vincent's sentence have to do with my lawsuit?" "Publicity. A reporter started digging into our family because of your legal action. If you hadn't filed a lawsuit, none of this would have come out." "Mom, Vincent committed a felony hit and run. It would have come out anyway. He was going to take a plea deal. The lawyer said he'd get probation and community service, but then the media attention forced the prosecutor to show integrity." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, you're upset that the drunk driver who sent a woman to the hospital actually has to face punishment?" "I'm upset that my daughter destroyed her own family for revenge." "Vincent destroyed Mrs. Kessler's life. He deserves to go to jail. And Tessa deserves to lose the man she loves because you couldn't forgive us for delaying your wedding." Then it hit me. In my mother's mind, delaying my wedding was a minor inconvenience. Vincent's prison sentence was a tragedy. The scale was completely wrong. "Mom, are you hearing yourself? You're more upset about Vincent going to jail than you are about the woman he almost killed." "Don't be dramatic." "She's fine. She has brain damage. She's old anyway. She probably only has a few good years left." I hung up. Then I called Camden at work and told him to come home right away. I was packing when he arrived. "We're leaving," I said. "What happened?" I told him about the call, about my mother's reaction to Vincent's sentence, about her disregard for Mrs. Kessler's injuries. "These aren't good people," I finally said. "I made excuses for them because they're my parents, but they're not good people." Camden helped me pack without saying a word. We loaded everything into the U-Haul that night. "Where are we going?" he asked. "I've been thinking about it. Your cousin in Denver offered you a job last year. Is it still available?" He made the call. 2 weeks passed. We lived in a small apartment in Colorado, 1,500 yards from my parents and their dysfunction. I found a job as a financial analyst at a nonprofit that helped low-income families manage debt. Ironic, given my own financial situation. Student loan payments were brutal. We ate ramen almost every night and hadn't bought new clothes in months. But I was free. The lawsuit continued at a distance. Janet kept me updated via email. My parents hired expensive lawyers and aggressively fought each lawsuit. They filed countersuits, accusing me of defamation and emotional distress. Legal costs mounted for everyone involved. 8 months after we moved to Denver, I got a call out of the blue. "Is this Eleanor Morrison Chen?" The voice was older, slightly shaky. "Yes. This is Eleanor Kessler." I almost dropped the phone. "The woman Vincent hit." Mrs. Kessler, how are you? I've been following your trial. My granddaughter is a lawyer, and she helped me understand the legal aspects of Vincent's case. When she saw your name associated with his family, she did some research. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. Thank you, dear. But I'm not calling for sympathy. I'm calling because I want to help. Help with what? With your lawsuit. I understand that your parents financed Vincent's defense after he almost killed me, but cut you off financially for marrying without their permission. Is that correct? Yes, that's essentially it. Well, I think it's outrageous, and I'd be willing to testify on your behalf if it will help your case. I was speechless. This woman who had been catastrophically injured by my sister's boyfriend wanted to help me sue my parents. Mrs. Kessler, you don't owe me anything. No, but I do owe society something. Your parents' actions tell a story about their values, and I think the judge needs to hear that story. I invited Janet, who was delighted. That's exactly what we need, Janet said after we hung up with Mrs. Kessler. She's a compelling witness who can speak to the moral dimension of your parents' financial decisions. Will that help the case? Greatly. It humanizes the consequences of their priorities. They had chosen to support the man who nearly killed her while punishing you for getting married. The contrast could not have been more stark. The trial was set for the following spring. As it approached, my parents' behavior became increasingly irrational. They hired a private investigator to follow Camden and me, looking for evidence of our lavish lifestyle that would contradict their claims of financial hardship. They found nothing, because there was nothing. We were barely making ends meet. They contacted Denver nonprofits to alert them to my history of mental instability and lawsuits. Most ignored them, but a few expressed concern. My reputation was under systematic attack. The breaking point came when they showed up unannounced at my new workplace. I was in a client meeting when a coworker knocked on the conference room door. Eleanor, your parents are in the lobby. They say it's an emergency. My heart stopped. Had something happened to Tessa? After all, she was still my sister. I excused myself and found them in the waiting room, looking completely out of place in their expensive clothes among the modest surroundings of our nonprofit. What emergency? I asked immediately. You, Dad said. That's enough. What are you doing here? Mom asked. We flew in to talk some sense into you before this trial destroys everyone. How did you find my workplace? Dad asked proudly, as if following me was an accomplishment. We hired professionals. You hired private investigators to follow me? We hired people to watch our mentally unstable daughter. My coworkers stared. The clients in the waiting area looked confused. My boss emerged from her office, clearly concerned. Are you okay, Eleanor? These are my parents, I said. They're leaving. We're not leaving until you agree to drop this ridiculous lawsuit, Mom announced loudly. My boss, a woman named Rita who had worked with families in crisis for 20 years, stepped forward. I'm going to ask you to lower your voice or take this conversation elsewhere. Dad turned to her with the full force of his condescension. This is a private family matter. We're trying to help our daughter before she makes the biggest mistake of her life by attacking her at work. Rita's tone was steely, wrapped in silk. By forcing her to face reality, Mom snapped. She's been living in a dreamland, thinking she can just cut off her family and not face the consequences. What consequences? Rita asked, though I sensed she was genuinely curious. Financial independence, Dad said triumphantly, as if that proved his point. She wants to be independent? Fine. Let her see what that really means. Rita stared at him for a long moment. So, you're punishing your daughter for getting married? We're teaching her responsibility by hiring detectives to follow her. By showing up at her workplace uninvited, by making her personal affairs public. My parents exchanged glances, clearly not expecting a rebuff from the stranger. That's none of your business, Mom said dismissively. That's my business when people disrupt my workplace and upset my employees. I'm going to ask you to leave. We're not leaving without our daughter, Dad said firmly. Your daughter is a grown woman with her own job and her own life. She can leave whenever she wants, but you're leaving now. Rita walked to her desk and picked up the phone. Security, I need help in the main lobby. Then Mom lost it completely. You can't kick us out. We're her parents. We know what's best for her. She makes terrible decisions and ruins everyone's lives. What terrible decisions? Rita asked. Getting married, getting a job, living on her own, suing her own family, ruining relationships. She was manipulated by this husband into thinking we were enemies. Rita looked at me. Eleanor, do you want your parents here? No, I said quietly. I want them to go away. You heard her. Security arrived, two polite but firm guards who had clearly dealt with situations like this before. They escorted my parents out as my mother continued to scream. This is not over. We will not give up on you. You are still our daughter, no matter how much you hate us. After they left, Rita took me to her office. Are you okay? I was shaking. I'm so sorry. They've never done anything like this before. Don't apologize. What they did was harassment, and frankly, it makes me want to testify in your case myself. You don't even know the details. I know enough. I've worked with hundreds of families over the years. What I just saw was emotional abuse and manipulation. Your parents came here specifically to humiliate you and damage your professional reputation. She was right. They weren't here to make peace or apologize. They were here to cause a scene in my workplace, probably hoping to get me fired. The trial starts next week, I said. Okay, I hope you destroy them. That night, Camden and I sat in our tiny apartment discussing what had happened. They flew to Denver just to attack you at work, he said. Do you see the lengths they'll go to? I did. Finally, completely. I did. They'll never stop. I realized that even if I dropped the lawsuit tomorrow, they'd find new ways to punish me until I came crawling back on their terms. So, what are we going to do? We'll finish this. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in April. Janet had prepared me well, but it still felt surreal to see my parents in the courtroom. They sat at the defendant's table with the defense team, looking dignified and hurt. Mrs. Kessler was our first witness. She walked slowly to the stand with a cane, still suffering from the effects of her head injury. Her testimony was devastating. The defendants financed the legal defense of the man who almost killed me, she said clearly. Not because he was innocent, but because he was dating their daughter. Meanwhile, they cut off financial support for their other daughter for the crime of marrying without permission. That tells me everything I need to know about their character and priorities. My parents' lawyer had tried to paint her as a bitter old woman seeking revenge, but it had the opposite effect. Mrs. Kessler was eloquent, sympathetic, and unwavering. Young man, she told their lawyer, I don't want revenge. Vincent Marsh is in prison where he belongs. I am here because I believe that parents who enable criminals while punishing law-abiding children should face consequences. My testimony lasted 2 days. I told the story of financial control, the cancellation of the wedding, retaliation, harassment. Janet made me read a letter sent by my parents' lawyer detailing how my emotional instability would affect my professional life. Have you ever been emotionally unstable at work? Janet asked. No, I've gotten straight A's from my work my entire career. So what was the purpose of the letter? To punish me for marrying without their permission, damaging my reputation and career prospects. Camden testified about the night I got the call, calling off our wedding, my mental state afterward, our decision to elope. Was it an impulsive decision, born of emotional instability? Janet asked him. No, it was a practical solution to a broken promise. We had been planning the town hall ceremony as a backup plan since we got engaged, in case something went wrong with the big wedding. Why? Camden looked directly at my parents. Because Eleanor's family has a history of unreliability when it comes to important commitments. Their lawyers had tried to discredit our witnesses and paint me as a vindictive daughter seeking money I didn't deserve. But the evidence was overwhelming. Every financial threat was documented. Every instance of harassment was recorded. The pattern was undeniable. During my father's testimony, Janet destroyed him. Mr. Morrison, you funded Vincent Marsh's legal defense after he fled the scene of a hit-and-run accident that left an elderly woman in hospital. Is that correct? We supported our daughter through her difficult time. But you withdrew your financial support from Eleanor when she got married. Is that correct? We reconsidered our priorities. So your priority was supporting a drunk driver over your law-abiding daughter? That's not true. Did Vincent Marsh commit a felony hit and run? He made a mistake. Yes or no, Mr. Morrison? Did Vincent Marsh commit a felony hit and run? Yes. But you paid for his legal defense? Yes. While simultaneously cutting off Eleanor's student loan support because she got married? Those are unrelated decisions. Really? Because your letter to Eleanor specifically stated that financial support was withdrawn because of her demonstrated poor judgment in entering into the marriage. Did you take Vincent's judgment into account when funding his defense? Dad couldn't answer that question without admitting his double standard. Mom's testimony was even worse. She burst into tears several times, portraying herself as a grief-stricken mother whose daughter had turned her back on the family. But under cross-examination, she admitted calling my workplace to warn me about my mental state, contacting Denver organizations to damage my reputation, and hiring detectives to follow me. Mrs. Morrison, Janet said, you testified that you love your daughter and want what's best for her. Is hiring people to follow her an expression of love? We were worried about her. Is trying to fire her from her job an expression of love? She needs to understand the consequences. What consequences should Eleanor face for getting married? Mom couldn't answer either. The trial lasted 5 days. During closing arguments, Janet laid out the case with surgical precision. This is a case about control masquerading as love. The defendants used financial support as a weapon to maintain power over their adult daughter's life choices. When she refused to submit to their control by marrying without permission, they retaliated by withdrawing support, sabotaging her career, and launching a harassment campaign designed to bring her back under their control. They would have you believe that this is about family values and financial responsibility. But their own actions reveal their true priorities. They willingly funded the legal defense of a drunk driver who nearly killed an innocent woman, but they punished their daughter for the crime of marrying. They hired detectives to monitor their own child. They called her workplace to damage her reputation. They flew across the country to attack her at work. Eleanor Morrison Chen committed no crime. She made no mistake. She simply chose to live her life as an independent adult. For that, her parents declared war on her future. They must face the consequences of that choice. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found in my favor on all counts: financial damages for wedding expenses, lost trust fund, inheritance and career damage, $847,000. Punitive damages for harassment and emotional distress, $1,200,000. The grand total, just over $2 million. My parents' faces were stony as the verdict was read. They had gambled everything they had to teach me a lesson about crossing boundaries, and they had failed miserably. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked me if I felt vindicated. I feel free, I said. Money had changed lives, but not in the way you might expect. Camden and I didn't buy a mansion or fancy cars. We paid off our student loans, bought a modest home, and started a scholarship fund for disadvantaged students who needed funding for an education without strings attached. Mrs. Kessler became our first honorary scholarship grandmother. At 83, she took community college courses for fun and got better grades than students 60 years her junior. My parents are appealing the decision. Of course, their appeals failed. They tried to file for bankruptcy to avoid paying, but the court found that they had hidden assets specifically to avoid the judgment. Dad ended up serving 6 months in jail for contempt of court. Tessa called me one day during the appeals process. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "Mom's on antidepressants and Dad's seeing a therapist." "You destroyed them." "They destroyed themselves," I said. "I just refused to go down with them." "They're still your parents." "No, parents don't stalk their children. Parents don't try to ruin their children's careers. Parents don't bankroll criminals by punishing law-abiding children. They stopped being my parents the moment they chose control over love." That was the last time we spoke. 5 years later, a lawyer I didn't know called. "Mrs. Chen, I'm calling about your father's estate." My heart sank. "Is he dead?" "Yes, I'm sorry. He passed away last week of a heart attack. I'm handling the estate. I felt nothing. No grief, no relief, just emptiness." "Am I in the will?" "Yes. He left you a letter. The letter arrived 3 days later. It was my dad's handwritten script, familiar from the homework help and birthday cards he'd sent me as a child. Eleanor, the letter began. If you're reading this, then I'm dead and you probably won. You got what you wanted. You destroyed our family and made us pay for it. I hope the money was worth it. Losing my parents and sister forever. But I want you to know something. Everything we did because we loved you. We wanted to protect you from making mistakes that would harm your future. We wanted to set you up for success and happiness. You saw control where we saw care. Your mother never got over losing you. She died inside when the verdict was handed down. I died inside watching her fade away. We lost everything because you couldn't forgive us for delaying the wedding. I know you'll never forgive us for the lawsuit or what followed. But maybe one day you'll understand that parents make mistakes when they try to do what's best for their children. Maybe when you have children of your own, you'll see that love and control sometimes look the same from the outside. The home is yours now. Your mother wants to keep living there, but the title is in your name. I think you'll kick her out, like you kicked us out of your life. Just remember, revenge has a price. I love you. I've always loved you, even when I was too proud to admit I was wrong. The letter was signed, Your father, who failed you. I sat in my living room in Denver, holding the letter, trying to process this latest manipulation. Even in death, he was trying to make me look like the villain. The house was mine, but my mother lived there, and apparently I had to either let her stay, proving I'd forgiven them, or evict her, proving I was heartless. Camden read the letter over my shoulder. What do you want to do with the house? I thought about it. The next week, I flew back to my hometown for the first time since the trial. The house looked smaller than I remembered, more shabby. My mother answered the door, looking a decade older, thin and gray and frail. So you've come to claim your prize, she said. I've come to sign the deed. She blinked, confused. The house is yours, I said. I don't want it. I never wanted it. I don't understand. Dad thought it was about money and revenge. It was never about money and revenge. It was about freedom. I handed her the prepared legal papers. The house was hers. Free and clear. Why? She asked. Because holding on to anger is another form of prison. I've been free for 5 years. I want to stay that way. She began to cry then. Deep sobs that seemed to come from years of pent-up grief. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. We were wrong about everything. For a moment, I almost hugged her, almost told her it was okay, almost went back to my old habit of managing her emotions and solving her problems. Instead, I said, I forgive you, but I can't have a relationship with you. Some damage can't be fixed, only acknowledged. I left the house keys on her kitchen table and walked away. On the plane home to Denver, I thought about Dad's letter and his latest attempt to guilt me into believing I'd broken up our family. But I hadn't broken up anything. I'd just refused to stand for it. Everything was different. Camden met me at the airport with flowers and our 2-year-old daughter, Grace. She ran to me on her baby legs, screaming, Mommy. No strings attached, no manipulation, no strings attached, just love. As we drove home through the mountains of Colorado, Grace chatting in her car seat about her day at preschool, I realized something important. I hadn't broken the cycle of dysfunction out of anger or revenge. I had broken it out of love. Love for the children I hoped to have someday. Love for the life I wanted to build with Camden. Love for the person I could become if I stopped trying to earn the approval of people who would never give it freely. My parents had confused control with love for so long that they couldn't tell the difference. But I could. And my daughter would grow up knowing the difference. That night, as she tucked Grace into her crib, she reached out and stroked my cheek with her tiny hand. Love you, Mommy, she said sleepily. Love you too, baby, I whispered back, and I meant it. No strings attached, no expectations, no obligations.